It was supposed to be just another quiet morning in a peaceful suburban neighborhood. But when the HOA tried to evict a decorated war hero from his own home, the situation quickly spiraled into something extraordinary. What happened next stunned neighbors, local authorities, and everyone watching the story unfold online. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts on how you would stand up for justice, because this story is all about courage, resilience, and never backing down. The Maplewood subdivision was known for its manicured lawns, quiet streets, and neighbors who greeted each other with friendly waves. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else, or at least thought they did. Among these residents lived John Thompson, a decorated war hero, whose service in the military had earned him respect and admiration long before the HOA dispute began. John was a man of principle, discipline, and quiet strength, with a lifetime of stories etched into the lines of his face. One sunny morning, as John tended to his small garden in front of his home, a black SUV pulled up. Out stepped the HOA officials, papers in hand, faces tight with determination. They were here to deliver a notice that would change the course of the day. An eviction attempt. Neighbors watched from behind curtains and fences, their curiosity piqued. Among them, Lisa, a young woman with a smartphone in hand, began recording the scene. Her instinct told her this was not just another HOA disagreement. This was something bigger, something remarkable. John approached the officials calmly, his posture steady, exuding a quiet authority that came from years of experience. He listened to their demands, but the subtle shake in one official's hand betrayed uncertainty. They may have held papers and rules, but John held something far stronger: integrity, honor, and a lifetime of courage that no paper could overturn. As the confrontation escalated, neighbors began to gather. Some peered from their windows, others stepped cautiously onto the sidewalks. The tension grew palpable, a mix of fear, awe, and anticipation hanging in the suburban air. John did not raise his voice. He did not shout. He simply stood tall, letting his presence speak louder than any words could. The HOA officials attempted to assert authority, pointing to rules and fines, but John's calm demeanor and unwavering stance made it clear that this was no ordinary dispute. Lisa continued recording, her hands steady despite the intensity of the moment. Her narration, though silent in the video, captured the unspoken drama, a veteran defending his home, backed by a lifetime of principles, against rules that seemed trivial in comparison to honor and integrity. It was then that John's phone buzzed. A call from his attorney, a trusted friend, and a former military comrade assured him that legal support was on the way. But more importantly, it reminded him that courage was not measured in words or paperwork. It was measured in action, presence, and unwavering resolve. The neighbors, now fully engaged, whispered among themselves. "Can they really evict a war hero?" one asked. "This doesn't seem right," said another. Their concern grew as they observed John's calm composure in the face of bureaucratic intimidation. Inside the SUV, the lead HOA official hesitated, sensing that the situation was quickly slipping out of their control. Their confidence, once firm and unwavering, began to waver. John's reputation as a war hero, coupled with the collective attention of the neighborhood, had shifted the balance. Lisa's recording captured every moment: the tension, the standoff, the quiet authority of John Thompson. Her video would soon circulate online, drawing national attention to what had started as a local HOA dispute, but had now transformed into a story of courage, resilience, and the unwavering defense of one man's home. Time seemed to stretch. The air between the veteran and the HOA officials thickened with anticipation. Neighbors held their breath. John's silence was louder than any protest. His calm, steady gaze made it abundantly clear. He would not be moved, and he would not back down. As the first legal representative arrived, the HOA officials realized they were facing more than just resistance. They were facing a veteran whose life had been built on discipline, courage, and unwavering integrity. The rules they wielded on paper meant little against the strength of a man who had already faced far greater challenges on distant battlefields. The stage was set for a showdown that would not be measured in violence, but in principle, presence, and the power of legacy. And in that moment, every neighbor, every witness, and every passerby knew they were about to witness something extraordinary. The suburban street was quiet, almost unnaturally so, as if the neighborhood itself had paused to watch the unfolding drama. John Thompson stood at the center of it all, calm, composed, and unyielding. Behind him, his modest home gleamed in the sunlight, every detail reflecting years of care, pride, and resilience. The HOA officials, papers clutched tightly in hand, tried to assert authority. They cited regulations, fines, and clauses from the Homeowners Association handbook, attempting to overwhelm John with bureaucracy. But their words, sharp as they were, felt hollow against his presence. Neighbors had begun to step out, some hesitantly, others openly, forming a silent audience to the standoff. Their expressions ranged from awe to concern, whispering among themselves. One elderly neighbor shook his head, muttering, "They've picked the wrong man to push around." Lisa, the young woman still recording the scene, narrated silently with her phone's camera, zooming in on the subtle tension. Every glance, every hand gesture, every shift in posture told the story more powerfully than any words could. The HOA officials were starting to realize that their paper-backed authority carried little weight in the presence of a man who had already faced life and death, situations in war. One official stepped forward, attempting to deliver the eviction notice directly. John extended his hand politely to receive it, but before he touched it, he looked up, his gaze calm yet unwavering. The officer faltered under the weight of that stare, suddenly aware that he was not dealing with an ordinary resident. "I respect the rules," John began, his voice steady and measured. "But there is also a law that protects homeowners, and a man's honor cannot be disregarded lightly." The words, though spoken softly, resonated across the quiet street. Neighbors listened closely, absorbing the gravitas of a veteran who had dedicated his life to service, discipline, and integrity. The HOA officials, despite their confident posturing, sensed the balance of power slipping from their grasp. Lisa panned her camera over the crowd. Curious children, concerned parents, and elderly neighbors, all captivated by the display of quiet authority. The subtle drama unfolded like a scene from a cinematic film, every gesture meticulously captured by her lens. Minutes passed, though it felt much longer. The tension was thick enough to slice through with a knife. The officials exchanged nervous glances, their once unwavering confidence now rattled. They realized that this was no simple eviction. They were facing a man whose life had been defined by courage and unwavering principles. A neighbor finally spoke up, stepping forward to voice support for John. "He's a war hero. You can't just treat him like this." Others quickly followed, creating a quiet chorus of dissent. The HOA officials hesitated, their rules on paper clashing with the undeniable moral weight of public opinion. John's calm composure never wavered. His hands rested lightly by his sides, his stance steady, and his eyes focused. It was clear he was not intimidated by their bureaucracy or their attempts at force. Instead, he exuded a quiet strength that spoke of battles, fought far beyond the neighborhood streets, battles that required far more than words or documents. The HOA lead official, sensing the momentum shift, tried one last tactic, threatening legal escalation and fines. But John's response was both measured and powerful. "Threats and fines do not replace justice or respect. I have served my country, and my home is protected under the law." The words hung in the air, electric and unyielding. Neighbors murmured their approval, while Lisa's camera captured every second, recording a story that would soon reach far beyond the quiet. Maplewood subdivision. As the confrontation stretched, it became evident this was not about papers or rules. It was about courage, principle, and the unwavering defense of what is rightfully yours. The veteran's presence alone was a testament to authority earned, not demanded, a reminder that true power often lies in restraint, discipline, and integrity. The HOA officials finally took a step back, visibly shaken. Their attempts to intimidate had failed. They were confronted not by hostility, but by the steadfast resolve of a man who had lived by principles far larger than any HOA handbook could convey. Lisa zoomed in on John's face one last time, capturing the quiet confidence in his eyes. It was a look that said, without words, that some battles are won not by aggression, but by unwavering presence and moral courage. The neighborhood remained still, holding its collective breath. It was a moment of transformation, not through conflict, but through the undeniable force of honor, legacy, and truth. The suburban street, once ordinary, had become a stage for an extraordinary lesson in courage and resilience. Outside the circle of neighbors, passers-by stopped in their tracks, sensing the weight of the scene. A moment that began as a routine, HOA confrontation had escalated into a powerful display of principle, meeting bureaucracy head-on, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. The morning sun reflected off the neatly trimmed lawns of Maplewood subdivision, casting long, deliberate shadows across the street. What had started as a routine HOA dispute had escalated into a spectacle, drawing neighbors from their homes and capturing the attention of everyone present. John Thompson remained at the center, a portrait of calm authority. His uniform of medals and past honors may have long been stored away, but the presence and discipline of a seasoned war hero were unmistakable. Every movement was deliberate, every glance commanding attention. The HOA officials, once confident and assertive, now hesitated. Their documents and citations, meant to enforce authority, suddenly seemed fragile in the face of a man who had faced life or death, challenges far beyond suburban rules. A group of neighbors, emboldened by John's composure, stepped closer. Some placed supportive hands on their fences, others spoke out. "You can't bully him!" one woman shouted. "He's a war hero!" Their voices, once tentative, gained strength as the veteran stood undeterred. Lisa, still recording, captured the unfolding scene with precision. The video framed John at the center, his posture unwavering, his gaze steady. The HOA official's gestures grew more desperate, yet each attempt at intimidation faltered against his calm authority. Every motion was measured, commanding respect without raising a hand. John took a deep breath, the faintest smile touching his lips. "I have served my country, defended the Constitution, and upheld the values that make this nation strong. My home is protected not by threats or rules on paper, but by the law and by the support of those who understand justice." The words struck the neighbors like a bell. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Children peeked from behind parked cars, curiosity and awe evident in their eyes. Neighbors who had been unsure moments ago now stood tall, ready to witness justice in its purest form. The lead HOA official cleared his throat, attempting once more to assert dominance. "Sir, you must comply with the rules. Eviction is—" John interrupted calmly but firmly, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "Eviction is not just a piece of paper. It is a measure of power. True authority, however, comes from integrity, courage, and respect earned, not demanded. I suggest you reconsider your approach before causing further damage to your credibility." A hush fell over the street. Even the birds seemed to pause mid-flight. The confrontation, once mundane, had reached a climax of moral authority versus bureaucratic rigidity. The HOA officials exchanged uneasy glances, realizing their intimidation tactics had failed utterly. Neighbors began to clap quietly, then louder, their support both for John and for justice itself. Their approval was palpable, tangible, and overwhelming. The veteran's quiet defiance had inspired a collective affirmation of right over fear, principle over paperwork. Lisa captured every reaction, shocked officials, supportive neighbors, children wide-eyed with awe, and John Thompson standing resolute, embodying the very definition of heroism in the face of unnecessary adversity. Her footage, unpolished yet raw, would soon be shared far beyond the subdivision, reaching viewers who needed to witness courage in action. The other HOA members began to step back, muttering among themselves. Their confidence had crumbled under the weight of truth, and the knowledge that they were no match for the authority of honor and service. Even with their rules, regulations, and papers, they could not override the moral weight of a decorated war hero standing firm in his rightful home. John's eyes scanned the crowd, acknowledging the neighbors' support with subtle nods. Each gesture reinforced the sense of community, courage, and the enduring power of standing up for what is right. The air was thick with pride, respect, and awe, a moment that would linger long in the memories of all who witnessed it. The tension, though still present, began to dissipate as clarity emerged. The lesson was unmistakable. Bureaucracy has limits, but integrity does not. Rules may govern property, but courage, honor, and the unwavering defense of one's home command reverence. far beyond any paper mandate. Finally, John stepped forward slightly, a deliberate motion signaling the end of the confrontation. This neighborhood, like any community, thrives on respect, fairness, and integrity. I have nothing against those who enforce rules, but those rules must not come at the cost of justice. Let this be a reminder. A wave of applause swept through the assembled neighbors. Some cheered, others nodded in solemn recognition. Even the HOA officials, defeated yet quietly humbled, realized that they had witnessed more than a legal dispute. They had seen a masterclass in courage, restraint, and moral authority. Lisa's camera captured the final moments of the standoff. John Thompson, calm, unbroken, embodying the ideals he had lived by for decades. The crowd, now fully supportive, had seen the power of presence, experience, and unwavering principle. The veteran had not only defended his home, but had imparted a lesson that extended far beyond Maplewood subdivision. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, its rays highlighted the veteran standing tall, the HOA officials retreating quietly, and the neighborhood united in admiration. In that moment, it was clear, some battles are won not with force, but with honor, courage, and the quiet yet undeniable power of standing for what is right. The suburban street, once tense with anticipation, now held a different kind of energy, a mixture of relief, admiration, and reflection. The confrontation that had dominated. The morning was beginning to reach its resolution, but its impact lingered in every corner of Maplewood subdivision. John Thompson remained calm, his stance relaxed, yet still commanding. The once confident HOA officials, their faces now tinged with embarrassment, shifted uncomfortably under the weight of public scrutiny. Their rules and papers had proven powerless against the unwavering presence of a man whose life had been defined by courage, honor, and service. Finally, the lead HOA official spoke, his voice hesitant and subdued. "Mr. Thompson, we will withdraw the eviction notice." His words, though simple, carried the gravity of concession. The officials turned to each other, silently acknowledging their defeat in the face of moral authority and public admiration. Neighbors erupted in quiet cheers, applause, and heartfelt congratulations. Some approached John, offering handshakes, hugs, and words of praise. Children who had been watching wide-eyed now clapped and smiled, understanding, even if only in part, the magnitude of what had occurred. Lisa, still recording, captured every reaction, the officials' retreat, the neighbors' relief, and the subtle, triumphant smile on John's face. Her footage would later serve as both a record of the day's events and an inspiration to viewers, far beyond the neighborhood. John raised a hand, signaling for calm. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady and composed. "I appreciate the support, but remember, this isn't just about me. It's about standing up for what's right, defending your principles, and respecting one another. A community thrives when integrity and courage are valued over intimidation or fear." The words resonated deeply with the crowd. Neighbors nodded in agreement, some wiping away tears, others shaking their heads in disbelief at how quickly a simple HOA dispute had become a lesson in moral courage. The veteran's message was clear. Rules without justice are meaningless, but courage and integrity transcend all. As the tension faded, the atmosphere shifted from confrontation to camaraderie. Children ran back to their play, neighbors returned to their porches, and the street began to hum with the familiar sounds of suburban life, but with a renewed sense of respect and admiration for John Thompson. The HOA officials quietly gathered their papers, no longer attempting to assert authority. Their faces, previously set in defiance, now reflected humility and the realization that true leadership and respect cannot be demanded. They must be earned. John's phone buzzed again, a message from his attorney confirming that the legal threat had been fully neutralized. But for John, the victory was not in legal terms. It was in the restoration of dignity, the support of the community, and the reaffirmation of principles that he had lived by for decades. Neighbors continued to approach, sharing stories of their own admiration for veterans and offering thanks for his service. Some spoke softly about the courage it took to stand firm, while others marveled at the calm yet commanding way he had handled the entire situation. Lisa lowered her phone, her footage complete, knowing that she had captured something extraordinary. The story she recorded would reach beyond the Maplewood subdivision, inspiring others to act with courage and integrity in the face of intimidation. John glanced at the retreating HOA officials one last time. There was no anger, no malice, only quiet acknowledgement of the lesson delivered. He had proven that rules are secondary to principles, that courage outweighs fear, and that dignity can never be stripped away by mere paperwork. The neighbors, once hesitant observers, now shared a collective sense of empowerment. The morning's events had transformed them, teaching lessons about bravery, standing up for what is right, and the power of a single individual to influence an entire community. As the sun climbed higher, its rays highlighted the veterans standing tall, the street alive once more, and the profound impact of a moment that had started with conflict but ended in inspiration. Maplewood subdivision had witnessed more than a simple dispute. It had seen a masterclass in courage, integrity, and the enduring power of honor. For John Thompson, the day was not about victory over paperwork or authority. It was about showing, in the simplest yet most profound way, that courage, discipline, and moral fortitude will always prevail over intimidation and fear. Neighbors began to return to their daily routines, but the story of the morning would remain with them forever. They had witnessed firsthand how a decorated war hero, armed with nothing but principle and presence, could transform a situation that seemed ordinary into an extraordinary lesson in respect and justice. The quiet hum of suburban life returned, but Maplewood subdivision was forever changed. Children would recount the story of the veteran who stood firm. Adults would speak of the lesson in integrity. And for John Thompson, another chapter of service had been written, not on a battlefield, but right in his own neighborhood, where courage, honor, and dignity had triumphed. The street was quiet now, the earlier tension replaced with a profound sense of calm and reflection. What had begun as a simple HOA dispute had evolved into a story of courage, principle, and unwavering moral strength, a story that would be remembered in Maplewood subdivision for years to come. John Thompson, the decorated war hero, stood on his porch looking out over his neighborhood. His posture remained strong, his gaze steady, but his expression carried a subtle, contented smile. He had faced battles on distant shores, seen the horrors and sacrifices of war, and yet this moment held its own kind of gravity. It was not a battlefield in the traditional sense, but it demanded the same courage, discipline, and moral fortitude he had learned through decades of service. Neighbors walked past, offering nods, waves, and words of gratitude. Children waved, inspired by the story they had witnessed, while adults quietly reflected on the power of integrity and steadfastness. The lesson was clear. True authority comes not from rules or intimidation, but from courage, honor, and the respect earned over a lifetime of principled action. Lisa, the young woman who had captured the events on her phone, approached John cautiously. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice steady but filled with awe, "this story, people need to see this. They need to know how you stood up for yourself and for what's right." John nodded gently, a quiet humility in his demeanor. "It's not about me," he said. "It's about showing that courage and integrity can make a difference. That even when faced with bureaucracy or fear, standing for what's right will always matter." That's the real lesson. The HOA officials had retreated quietly, their earlier arrogance replaced with humility. Their paperwork, once a symbol of authority, now seemed meaningless against the weight of moral courage. They had been shown that respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned, and it can never be taken by force. Throughout the neighborhood, conversations bubbled with admiration and reflection. Neighbors shared their observations, recounting how the veteran had stood unshaken, calm, and resolute. Each retelling amplified the story, transforming it from a local incident into a broader lesson about justice, courage, and dignity. John's son, Michael, a former military officer himself, joined his father on the porch. His presence was reassuring, a continuation of the legacy of service and honor that John had, cultivated over decades. Together, they represented not just a family, but a standard of principle that resonated far beyond the street. As the sun climbed higher, casting warm light over Maplewood subdivision, the veteran's actions became a symbol. The story was no longer about an eviction notice. It was about the enduring power of honor, courage, and steadfastness in the face of adversity. It was about the difference one person, committed to principle, could make not only for themselves but for an entire community. Neighbors slowly returned to their routines, but the memory of the morning's events lingered. It was a day that would be recounted. Time and again, a tale of a war hero whose life of service and discipline enabled him to stand firm, not through aggression but through moral authority. John Thompson looked once more at his home, his garden, and the neighborhood that had witnessed his quiet triumph. There was a sense of satisfaction, yes, but more importantly, a deep understanding that moments like these define the true measure of a life well lived. Courage, integrity, and honor were not just words, they were actions, reflected in every gesture, every decision, and every stance taken in the face of injustice. The neighbors, now fully inspired, would carry this story forward. Children would grow up hearing about the veteran who defended his home with dignity. Adults would reflect on the lessons of restraint, moral courage, and leadership by example. And even the HOA officials would leave, with a newfound respect for the power of principle over authority. Lisa's footage, still in her phone, was ready to be shared with the world. She knew that this story would resonate beyond Maplewood subdivision, inspiring countless others to stand firm in their own lives, to act with courage and integrity, and to understand that true respect is earned, never demanded. John Thompson finally stepped inside his home, the morning's events behind him, but their lessons etched deeply into the neighborhood's collective memory. What had been a challenge to his property had become a testament to the enduring power of honor, courage, and moral fortitude. And as the doors closed gently behind him, Maplewood subdivision remained changed. The quiet street had become a place where stories of bravery, integrity, and steadfast principle would be shared, remembered, and celebrated. One man's courage had created a ripple effect, reminding everyone that standing for what is right, calmly, decisively, and with unwavering honor, can change lives, communities, and hearts forever. The story of John Thompson, the war hero who faced the HOA and emerged victorious through principle and courage, would be remembered not for conflict, but for the legacy of dignity, honor, and the quiet power of doing what is right.